Good afternoon, friends on YouTube. This is Ben, or as some of you may have known me as Y10 when I joined YouTube in '08. Today I actually have a special video because it's somebody's birthday today. But it's not somebody's birthday today, it's something's birthday today. On this day, in 1995, August 14th, 1995, a video game console by Nintendo was released. It was a commercial failure, and it went by the name of the Virtual Boy. Yes, today is the Virtual Boy's 20th anniversary, and because of this, I decided I would do a review on the Nintendo Virtual Boy and talk a little bit about the Virtual Boy, why it failed, and how it was conceived. So let's get started with the backstory. Back in the mid-90s, we were starting to, around 1994, 1995, companies were starting to transfer from the 16-bit era to the 32-bit era. Though Atari with their Jaguar system, which I happen to own one over there, they wanted to go 64-bit, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the Virtual Boy. Nintendo, however, was a little behind. At that time, around 1995, they were working on the Nintendo 64, which was called the Ultra 64 then. The problem was, Sony had already released the PlayStation, which was a direct hit when it first came out, and Sega had released the Saturn the previous year in 1994. So at this time, Nintendo is kind of in a predicament because Sony and Sega are just looking to the side at Nintendo saying, "And your console, Nintendo?" And Nintendo doesn't have a final console to be released yet. So to fill the time, Game Boy creator Gunpei Yokoi, may he rest in peace. For those who don't know, he died in a fatal car accident 2 weeks before I was born. On October 4th of 1997, he was killed in a fatal car accident. Basically, he hit somebody on a Japanese freeway, and then when he went out to inspect the damage, he was hit by another car. So may he rest in peace. But Gunpei Yokoi, the creator of the Game Boy, conceived the idea of a console that used VR, virtual reality. And he said it would make you feel like you were in the game, virtual reality. And his product? The Virtual Boy. Or, well, this is what the back of the Virtual Boy looks like. Well, from looking at it from when somebody's playing the Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy was going to be Nintendo's first 3D console. Nintendo said it was 3D right out of the box, and because Gunpei Yokoi loved his portable consoles, he wanted to make it portable, though it never really turned out to be portable. What eventually happened was Yokoi and his group developed the Virtual Boy, and it was released in Japan in July of 1995. It was the 21st, I believe, but in America it came out on August 14th of 1995. With the launch title game Mario's Tennis. Not Mario Tennis, Mario's Tennis. They actually used proper grammar in this one. Anyways, so the Virtual Boy comes out on August 14th, 1995. It promised to be 3D right out of the box, it promised to be portable, and it promised to deliver stunning, unbelievable virtual reality graphics. Unfortunately, it never came to be. So let's talk about why the system failed. We'll take a quick tour of the console, and then we'll talk about why the system failed. So first of all, let's go ahead and take an overall look at the console. To play the Virtual Boy, you look into the system here through this eye shade visor, which is detachable. When you look into the eyepieces here, you're looking at two screens. The way the Virtual Boy works is on the back here. If we were to go inside the Virtual Boy, the way it works is there are two red LEDs on each side of the console. They pass through a lens filter, just to improve the quality, and then there are these two oscillating mirrors that are found on inside the eye shade visor here. And the red light, it bounces off of those mirrors and is scattered all over the two displays. There's one for the left eye, one for the right eye. And that's what creates the pixels that you see when you're playing a game on the Virtual Boy. That's how, and then of course those screens are merged into one screen to create the illusion of a 3D image. So when Nintendo says true 3D, that's actually not true at all. It's just a 3D illusion. The reason being is because if one of the screens breaks, you'll just see a standard two-dimensional image. So that's how you know that it's just it's not really 3D, it's just a 3D illusion. But that's how the Virtual Boy works as far as red lights. Now, why they chose red lights? Because a lot of people said when this first came out, why isn't the system in color? There was a reason for this, and I believe it was just one of those too much, too soon things. When the Virtual Boy first came out, it was probably supposed to be in color. I don't really ever remember. I wasn't alive when the Virtual Boy was in development or when it came out, but I have friends that are much older than me that remember when it came out. Of course, they were young kids, but they remember hearing that rumors that it was going to be in color. The reason it wasn't in color was simply due to cost. In 1995, the cost of the technology that would make it possible to have color screens would be cost prohibitive to the consumer. So for cost-cutting purposes, Nintendo used red light. Personally, I think they should have used green because one of the major problems with the system is it strains your eyes. Now with me, my eyes, I have 20/15 perfect vision, so it does not hurt my eyes at all. I've played this for hours and it doesn't hurt my eyes. They never get strained. I'm not trying to brag or anything, but the problem is most people, your average everyday person, would get terrible eye strain and headaches from playing the Virtual Boy. It even says in the Virtual Boy manual to take breaks every 15 minutes because it could cause headaches and eye strain and even seizures. In fact, every game that was shipped with the Virtual Boy or that was released for the Virtual Boy has an automatic pause feature because, you know, it's with the break thing and the headaches and all that stuff. So every game you buy for the Virtual Boy will have an automatic pause feature. Mario's Tennis being one of them. So let's go ahead and take a look at the console and then take a look at the controller, and then we'll talk a little bit about the system's failure. So I'm going to scooch up a little closer and we're going to take a look at the console. Put it right up to the camera. So on the front here, here's the Virtual Boy logo. This is the front of the console, even though it looks like the back. Your cartridge goes in here. The label faces upward when you put it into the cartridge slot. On the top here, you have your IPD adjustment and focus adjustments for adjusting the screens and the 3D image. On the sides, you have a Nintendo rubber bit on both sides. On the back, which some people consider this the front, but this is technically the back, you've got your eye shade visor here to block out light. Mine's falling apart, but it's still intact. Then you have your two lens pieces here where you look into the system to see the images. On the bottom, we have the volume adjustment here, a headphone port, the cartridge slot here. This is where you could connect a stand. Unfortunately, since I bought mine on eBay, the stand that came with it was broken. It was missing the piece that connected here, so I won't be able to show the stand, but that was so you could play it on a table. And then over here you have the port where the controller plugs in, right here, and then this port, which we'll talk a little bit more about it later. This was actually a Virtual Boy link port. It's marked EXT for extension. But like the Game Boy, which had a link port, the Virtual Boy was also going to have a Virtual Boy link cable, or VB link cable. Unfortunately, since the Virtual Boy was such a failure, they never released the cable for the Virtual Boy, and I don't think they ever made any games that supported it. Mario's Tennis was supposed to support it, but it was dropped in the final release, and games that did plan to have Virtual Boy link capabilities the ones that were released had that functionality taken out. But that's a quick tour of the system. Now we'll take a quick tour of the controller. So here's the controller. It's actually a pretty comfortable controller. One of my favorite controllers is the GameCube controller, and this is sort of an early prototype of the GameCube controller, just without the analog sticks. It uses D-pads instead. The controller actually has two D-pads, only the left one is used the most. The right one is only used in two games, which I'll talk about a little later. The A and B buttons are swapped. B is here, A is here. Then you have your start and select buttons here. And then the power switch. A lot of people get a Virtual Boy, don't have a clue how to turn it on, and you actually turn the system on through the switch on the controller, because if we take a look at the back, there's a battery pack here in addition to our L and R bumper buttons. This battery pack is removable, and I'll go ahead and get a look inside. It takes 6 AA batteries, as you can see, which was funny because when the Virtual Boy was first released, in the box there was an offer to get 6 free Duracell batteries if you mailed in some offer, but by that time you could have probably been already playing the Virtual Boy because you could have just gone to Walmart and bought the batteries yourself. But anyways, the battery pack slides onto the controller, and this is what supposedly makes the system portable. However, there's also an AC adapter. It takes an AC tap, which plugs into the back of the system just like this. It slides on. But you also need an SNES power adapter to plug it in. I actually do have the AC adapter. The only problem with it is I play with the battery pack because, and I believe AVGN mentioned this in his review of the Virtual Boy, the problem with the AC adapter is it doesn't stay on, it doesn't clip in correctly, and it can come loose, and it shuts the system off if that comes loose because there's no backup battery power. So if you're in the middle of a game and that comes loose, well, you're kind of screwed. So that's why I prefer the battery pack rather than the AC adapter. But I do have an AC adapter. It's just a tap where you plug the SNES cord in and then plug it into the wall. It's really nothing special. So I'll move back into position here, and now let's talk about the failure of the Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy failed mainly because of its headache-inducing and eye-strain-inducing red light capabilities. The games were in red and black. The graphics were not too impressive. And unfortunately, a lot of the games did not really immerse players in the virtual reality. What happened was, players could not indulge in the virtual reality because most of the games were not in first person. There were only 2 games released in North America that were first-person games. I actually have a stack of games right here. I don't have every game released for the system, but I can name a ton of games, including some of the rare ones. Let's go through the games really quickly. Mario's Tennis was the pack-in game in North America. It was just a tennis game. I'll actually show some gameplay footage a little later. Please forgive me for the footage. It's very difficult to record the Virtual Boy because I actually have to stick the camera in one of the lenses and try to play the game while looking through the other lens, through the viewfinder. It's very difficult to do, so please excuse the poor quality recordings, and hopefully the camera will focus. It might not. But yes, you had Mario's Tennis. Then there's also Nestor's Funky Bowling, which was just a bowling game. Nestor was from Nintendo Power, may it rest in peace, 1984 to 2012. This is what Nestor's Funky Bowling looks like. It's just a bowling game. You can play as Nestor or his sister or girlfriend or whoever the girl is. You enter your name, you get to choose the music, and I'll show some gameplay footage of this. Vertical Force, which is a Galaga 1942 knockoff. Personally, I don't think this one's worth showing because it's just a space shooter game. Really, the only 3D part of it is you can switch between top layer view and bottom layer view. Also, these Virtual Boy game cartridges have a dust cover like this that you can just remove before putting it into the system. Of course, since I bought most of these games off of eBay, most of them don't have the dust cover. Then you've got Mario Clash, which was the definitive Mario game for the Virtual Boy. There might have been a virtual Mario game for the Virtual Boy, but Mario Clash was the only game that ever made it to the final release on the Virtual Boy. It's a repetitive game. It goes on for 99 levels, and it's really just the same repeated stages over and over again. I'm terrible at it because I have trouble killing the enemies that have to be killed by throwing a Koopa shell from the distance, because that's how you kill the Koopas. You can only stop on the Koopas and then use their shells to throw at the other enemies. Some enemies have to be killed from a distance, and I'm just not very good at that. You have to time it exactly right. I will show some gameplay footage, though. It won't be my footage because I can't play it and record at the same time, but I will show some gameplay footage. Then we have Galactic Pinball, which is a pinball game. This one is actually one of the best 3D games on the Virtual Boy. It brings out the 3D experience to the with the Virtual Boy because it feels like using a real pinball machine because you hit the buttons on the bottom to control the flippers. So, in a way, this one does kind of tie in with virtual reality. And I do like the 3D effects, and this is actually a really addicting game. I've played this for hours on end. So, if you do have a Virtual Boy, get this game. I like it a lot. Then we have Golf. This one's not really worth showing because it's Golf in red and black, which are the only 2 colors the Virtual Boy can display. This one has a dust cover, but it's just Golf. It's just like any other golf game on the Wii, NES, SNES. basically in Mario Golf, except it's not Mario based, it's just a regular golf game. But it's in red, and it's just a weird game. It's not a weird game, it's just, I don't like the control, it's just not really meant for the Virtual Boy in my opinion. Then we have Telro Boxer. This is one of the 2 first-person games on the Virtual Boy that actually puts you in first-person mode. This is a good game. I haven't figured out the controls yet, but you basically fight other robots. Very neat game. First person, obviously. 3D effects are pretty cool on this game. So if you have a Virtual Boy, this is a game you might want to get. This is actually my latest acquisition. Then we have Virtual Boy Wario Land, originally known as Wario Cruise. If you buy a Virtual Boy complete in the box, you'll see it says Wario Cruise on the back, along with some other titles that were never released for the Virtual Boy. Wario Land is actually the best-selling game on the Virtual Boy, so yes, this is another game you will need to get if you have a Virtual Boy, because it's basically a Mario game except with Wario, and it's one of the few Wario games that Wario's been in. It's really, again, the only 3D part is you can leap into the background using springboards. There are some boss fights. It's a great game, and I like this game. I've played it several times. I've made it pretty close to the end, though there are some bosses that are just a real pain in the ass to fight. But this is definitely a good game. It's challenging, it's fun, it's entertaining. So yeah, I'd give this a go if you have a Virtual Boy. And last but not least, I have Red Alarm. This is the wireframe game that not many people like. It does have a first-person POV, but it really doesn't look realistic because of its wireframe design. I'll show some footage of it on the recording, but yeah, it's really not a game that many people liked on the Virtual Boy. So it's just one of those games where, you know, it's an optional game. Other games that were released on the Virtual Boy include 3D Tetris. It actually uses the right D-pad. Oh, and I forgot to mention Telro Boxer uses the right D-pad as well. Those are the only 2 games that use it. There are also 3D Tetris, Panic Bomber, which is a puzzle game. I really have no desire to own it because it's not really a game that belongs on the Virtual Boy. It was one of the games actually that was supposed to use the Virtual Boy's link port. However, since the cable was never released, you can't really play it. Though you can make your own third-party Virtual Boy link cable using an Ethernet cable, but you have to do a lot of modding to the system. And personally, I don't really know how to solder yet, so that's one thing I'm gonna have to teach myself. But yeah, through some hacking and modding, you actually can make homebrew applications and make your own homemade Virtual Boy link cable. And then you could probably play Panic Bomber in multiplayer mode. There was also one movie-related game, Waterworld, which is a semi-rare game. It's not as rare as some of the other games, but it's semi-rare. It's where you go around in a red-looking spaceship-like boat to save people. It's not really that great of a game. It was based off the Kevin Costner movie of Waterworld, released around the time the game came out. And I don't own it. Right now it's out of my price range. But if I find a copy for a decent price, I might buy it just to show off what it looks like. Then there's also a rare one called Jack Brothers. This is a rare game that was released in North America, but the Japanese copies are more common. It's very expensive. However, you can play Japanese games on an American Virtual Boy since Virtual Boys don't have any regional lockouts. Unlike the N64 and SNES games do, so you can play your Japanese games on the Virtual Boy. Jack Brothers is like a Wario Land, except you get to pick with 3 different characters and you fight enemies and you go through different levels. 3D effects really aren't that impressive, but it's an interesting game. I've played it on an emulator before, and I actually like it. The American version, obviously. If you buy it for the Virtual Boy, you're most likely going to be finding the Japanese version. The American version is so ridiculously rare, it would probably be cost prohibitive to buy it. Also, some other games that were only released in Japan. Oh, I also forgot to mention Virtual League Baseball. I have the game somewhere, but I don't remember where I put it. I do own the game, though. It's complete in the box. It's a baseball game. Not really much else to be said about it. It's not really that great of a game. In Japan, it was referred to Virtual Baseball 95, and also some other games that were only released in Japan, such as Virtual Fishing. One I would really like to get, another game that was only released in Japan, is Innsmouth no Yakata, which I think in Japanese it means something like a haunted house or something like that. But yeah, if you know Japanese, feel free to post what the translation means. It's a rare game, but it's in first person. There are several different endings you can get with it, and it's a really interesting game because it's like, it's best comparable for me playing Jaguar games to Alien vs. Predator because you're fighting several enemies, you've got very limited ammo, and you have very low health. So if you get hit, I think 3 or 4 times, you're dead and you have to start all the way back from the beginning. Unless, of course, you have a password. There's a password, an English password, for every level you go through. And I'm really eager to get Innsmouth no Yakata for my Virtual Boy because it's a really cool game, and it's actually quite scary. It actually, when I first played it on the emulator, I was a tad worried. A tad shocked, actually, when I saw the monster just flash up in my face, and I'm pretty sure it would look even more creepy on the Virtual Boy. Even creepier on the Virtual Boy. So that's about it for the regular Virtual Boy review. As far as how it did, as far as the games, people just weren't impressed with its graphics. It wasn't really a portable system because when you lay down with it, there's this piece here in the eyepiece that leaves a big red mark on your nose. You would look really peculiar playing this in public, even though I played it on an airplane. And yes, people looked at me like I was some sort of tech nerd or something like that, which I am a tech geek, but, well, they thought I was pretty awkward playing this on an airplane. I'm surprised that TSA even let me get it through security. But, yeah, it was not portable like it was meant to be. There was no head strap. The reason there was no head strap was because there actually was going to be a head strap, but Nintendo's health and safety department did not allow it to make it to the final product, so it was scrapped. So yeah, playing it as a portable system, it failed miserably as a portable system. The graphics weren't impressive, and I think it was just released at the wrong time. I think now with the Oculus Rift and some of the other VR headsets that are out, it would probably be better to release a console like this now, but, you know, in the 90s it was just too soon. But it was a good idea. It was definitely a good idea that Yokoi had in mind. Unfortunately, it was just way too early. Because now, of course, it would probably be in color. The Virtual Boy was discontinued in March of 1996, and I believe Nestor's Funky Bowling was the last game to support or release for the Virtual Boy. It could have been 3D Tetris, because the only 2 games I've played that have the copyright date in 1996 are Nestor's Funky Bowling and 3D Tetris, known as V-Tetris in Japan. But that is my review of the Virtual Boy, and as of today, I would like to wish it a happy 20th birthday. Now I'll get some gameplay footage for you. Stay tuned. Okay, so here's some footage of Mario's Tennis for the Virtual Boy. As promised, I'm going to unpause the game here. Now, please excuse the very poor recording quality, as I said before, the only way to record the Virtual Boy is through the to put the camera directly into the Virtual Boy as if it were my eyes. You obviously won't see the 3D in the camera because you have to look through both screens. But as you can see, I'm failing miserably at Mario's Tennis, but I'll be quiet so you can hear the music. You can hear the Virtual Boy's 16-bit sound chip in there. And this is just some quick gameplay footage of Mario's Tennis. This is probably the only game I'll be showing since my camera doesn't really have that much memory left on it. But this is just a quick gameplay demo of the Virtual Boy.